everyone, welcome to Mom's Writers Club. I am Jessica Payne, and Sarah will not be joining us today, but she will be back next week. Today I am here with Lisa Borne Graves. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
I'm going to read a quick bio on Lisa. Lisa is a young adult author, an English lecturer, a wife, a super mom of one wild child. She is originally from Philadelphia. She relocated to the Deep South and found her true place of inspiration. Her love for all literature led her to branch out from the academic arena to spin her own tales. Lisa has a voracious appetite for books, British television, and pizza, all things I love. Well, Lisa, I'm really excited to get to chat with you today. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey to become the writer that you are now?
It's very complex. I'll try to be brief. I've always been writing. I don't remember when I started. I was told I would tell stories as a toddler. And then my parents found writing hidden in my drawer. So I've always been a writer. I didn't start querying until 2011. I didn't really get into novels till a little bit before that. And I probably sent out about, I'd say 75, but it's probably a little bit more than that. I didn't keep track after 75. I was like done. So I had 75 rejections or ignores, but out of that pile, there were many partial requests, 3 or 5 full requests, and then 3 discussions with agents. One fell through, which was absolutely devastating. It was a agency that only took books they would be able to sell to film studios.
Oh, interesting.
So it was like big time, you know, and the agent we talked several times. She was so enthusiastic, but they voted, and there were 6 people on the panel, and I only got 3 out of 6 votes. I needed 4. And
so did they only do like movies, or was it that
they only took books that they believed they could make, they could also sell as movies. And it's the only one I came across like that. And I don't believe it was like big time studios necessarily. I think it was more like independent studios out in California, but that was their thing. And so they didn't want me in the end.
Aww.
So that was devastating. But I did have 2 agents that were interested. I had 2 R&Rs. And for those that don't know, that's revise and resubmit. And the revisions they were asking were way too much for my liking. It wasn't fix your grammar, tweak the ending. It wasn't something simple. To be brief, I have a series called the Immortal Transcripts, and the book's Quiver. And it has 4 distinct first-person points of view, divided up into different chapters. And what the agents were asking me to do was to get rid of the voices. And that would change everything from the mood of the novel, the audience of the novel. It would curb my writing back into something I didn't want it to be.
You didn't connect with how the agents wanted you to change your book.
Yeah, it was just asking way too drastic changes. And then even one of the agents used, I don't want to use like names of books, but used a comp name saying they wanted it more like this one book. And at that time, that book was actually getting flack for not being what it should be for YA, not being a good role model book. And I thought that not knowing that conversation was happening in the world was a red flag to me. And so I walked away, and that was quite difficult because you always think what could have been at the time.
It kind of, to me, seems like it would take a lot of courage because, you know, you were querying and your goal was to get an agent, and you had agents who were interested, but not connecting to how they wanted your book changed. I mean, that's got to be really hard.
You think it is really hard. And I did think about it deeply, but at the same time, it was like, do I want to write for me, or do I want to change myself just so I can sell? You know what I mean? For lack of a better word, not selling out necessarily, but it felt that way. It felt like if I made the changes, I was selling out. It wasn't being me. And yes, maybe I would sell a lot of books and I could make some money, perhaps. The dream, you know, that not necessarily happens to all authors to get an agent, but I always wrote for me. I wrote since I was a kid. It was always for me, and I shared it, and that's all I wanted.
So how did you find your publisher, and who is your publisher?
My publisher now is Authors for Authors, the number 4 in between. It is a bit of a journey. I started with a different publisher at first before I found them, or they found me. But it all kind of ties in what was going on in my life, which I'll get to a little bit later. But I had some struggles in life, and I kind of got this new mindset that I could just do anything if I put my mind to it. And I said, I want to get published. And I realized my query letter, looking at it, didn't have a good resume. I had 1 short story in a short-lived literary magazine, and I wanted to beef that up. So I was like, let me start with something small. So I found this contest for, they said short stories, but it's really like a novelette right? Like 50, 60 pages. And so it was a prompt, and I wrote the short story, and I entered this contest, and I won a slot, and I became published. Like, just, I wrote the short story in 2 weeks and sent it in, and they took it. And so suddenly, on a whim, not even caring or trying that hard, I happened to get published. And what people, I guess, have to kind of realize is once your foot is in the door, it's in the door, you know? And so to that publisher, I did query a couple of my works. They denied them. So then I went and I did something called Pitch to Pub. They don't have anymore. I think PitMed kind of overtook it.
Oh, okay. So it was like pitching for publishers instead of agents?
Yes.
Okay.
There were some agents there as well.
Okay. I think I've heard of it, even though it's no longer with us.
Yeah, she didn't have enough publishers that were interested. And actually, my first publisher was actually on there, and I hadn't queried them, like my third book.
Yeah.
And they wanted it, and so then they liked it, and they're like, "Why didn't you send this to us?" And I was like, "Okay." And then they published that one. It's a standalone called Apodai. Then since I had luck with that, I said, "Why query? Let me try these pitch days." And I did PitMed, and my new publisher found me.
And what book is that?
It is. It's called Fire, FYR.
And that's the first in your current series?
I have 2 series going on.
Okay.
So there was the one I mentioned, the Immortal Transcripts, that's ongoing, but this one is the Celestial Spheres. That's the one that I'm currently working hard on. It's a trilogy, and the third one's coming out very soon in July. So they picked up that one, and then I end up sending them later on Quiver, that original book, and they won that series too.
That's fantastic.
They took on both.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Lisa. So you mentioned earlier that you had an experience that made you feel like you could do anything, and I would love to hear more about that.
All right. So first, it has to do with my son, becoming a mom. And of course, that's a big milestone for anybody, and it changes our lives. But my son and I had a rough time during my pregnancy, and it pretty much, when I hit the beginning of my 3rd trimester, I was diagnosed with severe preeclampsia. I was checked into hospital, and this stuff is very hazy because you don't have a memory of kind of that time. I don't really remember much about his birth, and only little snippets come through. Because with preeclampsia, your blood pressure is extraordinarily high. So it's kind of like this fog. They
put you on medications that affect that as well.
Yeah, they instantly put me on liquid magnesium, which is not fun. Let's put it that way.
I had a similar experience, and I totally understand it. It makes the whole world is fuzzy.
Yeah, everything was fuzzy, but it was kind of touch and go with us. And I had to have an emergency C-section when he was just about 33 weeks long. So he was 7 weeks premature, and it was just rough because it was to the point where they just kind of said to us, like, "You guys are you're gonna die. Like, we got to get him out, or both of you are going to die." And they actually said that to us to show the gravity of the situation of why they had to do what they needed to do. And my son was healthy. They did such great doctors in medicine these days. Like I said, they had me on liquid magnesium and a bunch of other things. I was like a little pinata. It was IVs, pincushion, not pinata, pincushion. He was fine. They gave me the steroids to kind of speed up his lung growth and all that. So he physically was great. And it wasn't until he's about 3 years old when we started noticing that developmentally and with his brain, things might not be AKA normal. He was basically saying words, but not making sentences. And that was the first red flag. So my son ended up being diagnosed with autism and severe ADHD. And it wasn't a hard thing to take because by 6 years old, we knew stuff was going on. We just couldn't get labels to get therapy, to get help. And so we were looking for the labels, which I always thought is really funny because I am ADHD and I rejected my label for so long. And then, it happens to you in a different way, and you realize that it's nothing to be ashamed of, and it's almost like a badge of honor. It's whatever, this is me. And it was almost like a coming out in a way, and it felt good to admit to the world that I'm the way I am, and I'm proud of it. But so that was one thing my son did for me. But the whole thing of, I don't think many people, hopefully not many people have faced this, but the whole idea of like seeing the possibility of death just makes you grasp on to life. Anytime we have any troubles or any obstacles or anything in our way, whether it's, you know, emotionally, financially, anything. It's just kind of like we're alive.
Yeah.
That's it. This is nothing. We're alive. So that's one thing that made me stronger. So what if I have queries that are denied? We're alive. You know what I mean? And so that mentality helped me. And then seeing my son hit these obstacles all the time at first that other kids do not was devastating, to be honest. But then you have to, you know, you change your thinking, you adapt, and you think, wow, he just overcame this. He can do this. If he can do this with everything against him, the world almost against him, then I can do anything. Right. And so when I thought I can do anything, I said, I'm going to be published this year. So I told my husband. It was right when we were getting the diagnoses for my son. I was just like, he can do this. He can get help. He can adapt. He can learn. He can, you know, situate himself in school better. And if he can do that, I can get published. And I just did.
Yeah, I love that. And you're so right. I think that when it's, you know, we get so upset when we get a rejection on a query or get turned down for publication. But when you look at the bigger scope of life and the world, it's like, yes, that does matter and it is disappointing, but it could be so much worse, and appreciating that. And I like what you said, that, you know, if he can do this, then I can do anything.
We always call him to his face too, like he's our hero.
Oh,
like
I love
everything that he's overcome.
Yeah.
He's just amazing.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that with us. That's a very personal thing. And I think a lot of moms out there can identify that with that. And so thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I know that one thing people wanted to hear more about was your experience with the small press that you have published with. So I would love to hear just about the process from when they acquired your novel to editing to actually launching it. If you can kind of give us a quick synopsis of that. And then I know people had a lot of questions for you that I'd love it if you had time to answer.
Okay. Like I said, they found me on a pitch day, and then I checked them out, and they were actually a new press. And I had honestly accumulated so many novels in my little stockpile that I had from like ever, that I was kind of like, you know, there was only good things online about them, but there was very few things because they were new. And I said, I'm going to take a chance because this is just 3 books out of, I probably had like 20 shelved. Oh, I've written since I was a kid, and some of them need a lot of work. Some of them need a lot of work.
I saw on your, sorry to interrupt you, but I saw on your website you have your books planned through like 2029, and I like, she is such a badass.
You think badass, but at the same time, they are all started and not completed. The ADHD goes here, then there, then there, then there, then there.
You'll get there.
Eventually, I just need to
that.
focus on the one that's next, and I tend not to do that. So I go where the muse takes me, unfortunately, and sometimes I kind of close the deadlines. But I said I'm going to take a chance, and I'm going to go in, and I really like them. There's such a collaborative bunch. It's called Authors for Authors because they are authors themselves, so they can see things from an author standpoint and a business standpoint. Which is really important, I think. And so it's very collaborative with everything. And so you're asking about the process. So I still had to query and all that with the query letter. And then when they liked that, then I still had to submit my manuscript, but I didn't have to do a synopsis for the first time. I was great. And then we had a meeting because they had a little issue with the ending. But I had already started writing the second novel, and I had it kind of included, and I'll just spoiler alert here, I included something in the second novel. So it was very simple change. I just had to move something from the second novel into the first novel. It was very simple change. So it wasn't like the R&R request of changing everything. So I said, yeah, I'm on. They were very great. They actually went over the entire contract with me, explained all the terminology and what it meant. Recommend to get a lawyer, but by the time I should have, but by the time I went through the whole thing, and then I Googled, and then I talked to a friend who knows more about law than me, it was like I understood everything anyway.
Yeah.
So I signed the contract, and after that, I'd say about 4 months ish later, I got the first edits back, which were developmental edits, and it was really nice. They do it on Google Docs, so it's back and forth, and sometimes we're on there at the same time. So we have conversations. It's
how wonderful.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then the next stage is, I guess you call them regular edits, right? And then continuity edits. There you go. Sorry, continuity edits is the next round. And then the last round is the copy editing.
Okay. So just basically what any other publisher would do.
Yeah, I think actually there's another editor in there. There's four.
Okay.
4 rounds. I don't know what the second round's called. I guess just editing. And I like that second round the most because it's a blind edit, meaning that editor doesn't know anything about the series
Oh, wow.
and just goes in there as like a reader.
I like that idea. I think that's really important.
And then I can be as involved as I want. So I'm more hands-on. So I help write the blurb for the back because I want to do that. Right. And they make it sound so much better. And then I do get input on the cover, right? I do get to have my say if I like the covers or not.
Yeah, you have great covers.
Thank you. And then, you know, they do a book launch for me and everything. They do ads and stuff, do some marketing and find me reviewers and stuff.
So I mean, you had a great experience with them.
I had a very good experience. I know like some people don't, and I think there's a huge range of, when you say small or indie press, there's a huge range of capabilities.
Definitely. I know one of the questions we got was, is an indie press the same thing as a small publisher?
Yeah, indie press, small press, independent press. Basically, which I didn't know at first until I just did my research, and that's when I thought, hey, I should query publishers directly and just escape the agent route because I wasn't having fun with that. I'm not saying I'll never go back there. I might. And I didn't realize that I don't know the percentage, but I'm saying that a huge percentage are indie or small presses because you're an indie or small press if you aren't in the big four. So there's the big four now, that big five went big four, and they're imprints. And if you're not in that, you are going to a indie or small press.
Interesting. So the mid-sized publishers are considered indie presses.
When I did my research, and this is probably like 5 years ago, there was like, back then there's like the big five and then everyone else. I didn't see much of a middle. Maybe there's a middle now. I didn't find much of that.
Okay. I think that question was from Deanna. Lindsay asked, do small presses typically sign for a book or the author as well? Or do they maybe just get first look at the author's next project?
It's definitely going to depend on your publisher. So the first publisher I had no qualms about anything. There's nothing in the contract to stop me from doing whatever I wanted to do. They just won that book for then and didn't care about future projects or didn't want to saddle themselves with my future projects. My publisher now does want the right of first refusal, which I heard is kind of standard in agents and other publishers. They don't they don't want you competing with yourself. So like you could sit here and have one book and then you could go somewhere else and have another book and compete with yourself and take away from that book. And so they kind of don't want that. And I was completely okay with that because I was like, sweet, I have somewhere to pour all my books into. And if they say no, I can just query it somewhere else, right? So I was okay with that. And mine has a time limit and genre specific. So I liked that. So it's kind of if I want to write, I'm writing some children's books, I'm probably going to do under a pen name. They have no claim on that. They don't want a claim to that because they don't publish children's books. It's not in my contract that they kind of own me.
So these are all things that were specified in your contract.
Yes, very detailed. I would always say, look at the contract hardcore, just to see what you're comfortable with. I know some people who would walk away just because it said first right of refusal because they freak out about that, but I was completely okay with that.
Yeah. I know we got a question about contracts, and I actually feel like the question was kind of asking for some in-depth detail. So to anybody watching, I would actually recommend hiring a lawyer. Like we could like Google details to know about a contract with any publisher, but really you need a professional to look at that. You can also go on sfwa.org and get information on indie presses and any publisher for that matter, not just the smaller ones. And then I know the Authors Guild of America, I think it's authorsguild.org. They have sample contracts, so that would be a place to go for that. Honestly, I don't really feel comfortable analyzing or asking you two, for that matter, to analyze what a contract should or should not say. I guess we could do you know of any big red flags offhand?
Red flags would be like the person was asking if they want to own you. Every work you make goes to us first. And no time limit on that. That would be a little alarming. And then, of course, to avoid vanity presses, because they can pose as small presses, anyone who asks for money.
Okay, so that's how you would define a vanity press if they're asking for money up front.
Yeah, I want to be careful with that. I got a little attacked on Twitter once. There are hybrid presses out there that are apparently legitimate that do ask for money, apparently, but I would never pay to publish personally.
Yeah, so I'll be attacked for it. And again, I don't know about hybrid presses, so I can't speak for them. But the general rule of thumb is that you should not be paying a publisher. It's one thing if you, I think maybe the hybrid presses are to some extent self-publishing, which is different than an indie press. So let's clarify that. But if a publisher is, if you are publishing with a publisher who's going to like put your work out there, the money should always flow to you. You should never be paying them for editing services or anything like that. Otherwise, you might be doing self-publishing, which is a totally different thing. It is a super valid way to publish, but it is a lot of work. And if you're going with an indie publisher, they should be doing those things for you. Oh, I also wanted to say, so far as the contracts question, Alexa Dunn has a YouTube channel and she does cover contracts somewhat. She kind of goes through and names a few things that she does know. So you could also check her out. We'll put a link below. And Bookends Literary Agency also has a video on contracts that we can also link to. So Hannah wanted to know, how do small presses get books out to stores? As in, do they know how to sell them to smaller stores? Are they primarily online? Where are your books sold?
I think that definitely depends on the publisher. So this is something you do want to look at actually in a contract. I didn't name my first publisher, so I'll talk about it. My first publisher only did print on demand.
Okay.
Through Amazon. So I found out the hard way, like through talking to a friend who used to own a bookstore, a colleague of mine. He explained to me how and why self-published authors have a hard time getting to stores, because if you do print on demand, there's no return policy to Amazon. So they can't return the books and they can't get them wholesale. So that's why bookstores tend to not carry self-published books. Even though I went through a publisher, they did print on demand, my first publisher. And so I realized then I couldn't get them into a store. But my second publisher uses, I believe it's Ingram Spark, which is a huge distributor in most English-speaking countries, so worldwide. And so my book goes to, you can order it through any major bookstore and I only checked the UK and here, the UK and the United States. But what they tend to do is make relationships with smaller independent bookstores and getting the books in those. And so I think there's about 5 or 6 I know of that my book is in the shelves.
Okay, so the last thing I wanted to ask you is if you could tell us a little bit about the book you have coming out this July.
Oh, okay. So I have my book Blade Sung coming out. Blade Sung, sorry, I couldn't say that. Coming out in July 24th. It is the last book of a trilogy for the series Celestial Spheres. A girl is transported to a different sphere. I kind of got inspired by something I read in grad school in old ancient texts, which is really weird. But
that sounds very cool. I read, I don't know if it's on one of your blogs or what, but I saw that and I was like, that sounds so amazing.
Oh, thank you. And so I created this whole kind of elemental world with fire magic and light magic and necromancers that potentially are trying to take it over. There's a cursed prince who was cursed by the necromancers, and this girl comes from Earth, hopefully to save the day. And so this is the end of their love story / adventure. And it's intense.
That sounds really fun. Lisa, where can we find you online?
LisaBorneGraves.com. Know you in the Born. And then I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is just Lisa Borne Graves. And then on Facebook, Lisa Borne Graves author.
And where can we find your books?
God, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Books A Million, any of those places online, you can find them.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
I enjoyed it too. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys can find me at author Jess Payne on Twitter. You can find Sarah at SarahFinn11. We would love it if you could give us a like and a subscribe. It helps the algorithms on YouTube show our videos to other writers and other moms out there. And thank you everyone for joining us. We have our chats every other Wednesday night. If you check my Twitter, you can see when the next one is. Thank you.